Good morning, everybody. Tashi delay.
Sanje Chodam
Soki Jonam Janju Badu Dagi Gapsuchi
Dagi
Dagi
Chengin
Chengin Gipe Toknangi Jolam Panju Sange Jupasho Ye Chodam Soki Jonam Janju Badu Dagi Gapsuchi Dagi Chengin Gipe Toknangi Jolam Panju Sange Jupasho Chodam Soki Jonam Janju Badu Dagi Gapsuchi Dagi Chengin Gipe Toknangi Jolam Panju Sange Anagate, Paragate, Parasum Gate, Bodhisattva, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasum Gate, Bodhisattva, Kayaka, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasum Gate, Bodhisattva.
Okay, let's go. Maybe that question deeper. Maybe it's like here. Okay, no problem. Okay, good. Yeah, good. No, no. Hola. Semja Tamjaga Tobdalana Macheva Sanja Gomaran Boja Chineja Tobacha. Teacher the Mejanju and Belabjana Tusha the Namsal, Lawa Shingle, Shimbal Tugo, Toilet Position Manoach Court. Cause of Pavata Kaja, Judges and Belabjation, Gabutabo, and Junju, Nigi, some check.
So we do our very best to do whatever we can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. And to do this, we know we must perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To perfect those trainings, we need to have a good knowledge of them. And to gain that good knowledge, we need to be able to rely upon a non-mistaken source. And that is in the form of this king of mind training texts, the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, by the great master Shantideva, that we have the good fortune to listen to this morning.
And the Nashi Chachana, a rank Tungi Nankala, and it touching a tapula to the Chabotaba, and more getting just a Lama number, and Lama Shajas set up.
And as we normally do as well, we set up the merit field in the space in front, which is made up of the one who is greatly compassionate and skilled in means, and in fact, in essence, our own root guru in the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha.
And the Ranga Tagodoya, and a city Pama, and the Tsengama, Dingama, Pama Memana Ranga Jinja, and marking a Simja Tamcha, George took a Simja to the Masa, never use some check.
And all around us are our own kind parents of this life, of the life previous to this, of the one previous to that, going back to a beginningless time, countless rebirths. Indeed, all the sentient beings of all the 6 realms are present without exception all around us.
And the Ranga Duna said the Lama to be over the and Jibo Om Kabo, Jamba Armor, Tua Home, the Eagles who set up, Tuga Hula, we said part of my Batuna, and Shingram Jana, Yeshiva, all other Chaba Chanta. And Yeshiva, the Lama to be on Banaba Chanta, Tipole Ongo, Chilama, we give a weekend extension.
And then the figure that we are visualizing in front as the merit field is marked at the crown by a white Om, at the throat by a red A syllable, and at the heart by the blue Hung syllable. From that Hung syllable, light rays emanate going out into the pure realms, inviting back the wisdom beings and empowering deities from therein. And the wisdom beings dissolve into the central figure, and the empowering deities confer the nectar of empowerment, some of which overflows at the crown, spontaneously producing the figure of Akshobhya.
That the lady in Benin, Ranga Duna said, Lama to be on board the Yeshiva was Shuchana, Taka Jaja, what the compassion and to make any chicasole, Ranjiba Tamjela Java, Shantiba de la Tabla Java, Kuna Tujish when you remember Chuma, Pantava, Mata, Tamjaka to answer, Zeganji Bata. Taganisha, Tambuna, Tombasu, Tambuna, Caso de Rawang to Bachu, Maiba, Tambun, Tambo, Marato, the Jinchi, and it bear, and a jing and junket, Janju the same cat, young Tawa Kene, Marazo to the two cat, Marazo to the Lamla, Marazo to the Mubas of Sanja, indicated, much of a check. On a dead to but the Kusu to be in that and a Pagon, you were subject to that. And a Randa Kokuna Sumba, they were to John Deapo, Mutiba to know that to know a chicken, chicken, you want ticket. And the data to know that Ninja, to make you Kusun to be in that Deva. What a little compassion.
And so visualizing that the being of Shakyamuni Buddha occupying the merit field is completely empowered by the wisdom beings, has all of the necessary qualities of an enlightened being, in that they have no fear in relation to suffering regarding themselves, is skilled in means in removing the suffering of others, who works with great compassion and without bias for all sentient beings, and who works to benefit others regardless of whether there is any benefit in return. And that we understand also, of course, that the Buddha, the one who we have so much faith and admiration for, wasn't always enlightened, but actually began as a rank beginner like ourselves, and developed the mind of renunciation, the mind of enlightenment and a correct view, and then for our sake generated the mind of enlightenment, proceeded on the path for our sake, and then for our sake also manifested full and complete enlightenment. And so that we really come to have this tremendous sense of faith in the enlightened being. But similarly, when we view all the sentient beings all around, we know that they are bereft of the happiness that they so desire, and are inundated by the sufferings that they do not want, and that they, like us, have every right, equal right to the happiness and to avoid that suffering. And that when we view the enlightened being in the merit field, we are filled with faith. And when we view all the sentient beings all around us, we are filled with compassion.
What is it? That the lane by his and it because Semjela maybe Nietzsche, Lama to be on Kuson to Yunde, Jenshimagona, Tame Deva, Ichi Deva, Mundu Deva, such. What did they debated? She can't do get to watch it. The day in by Yinza, and it Semja the data the devil. Kasura that to get the water they do the Java Tana Jimmer, Deba Shuch, Deba Chuch, Deba Tang, sons of compassion. Suggested that to get the the Jana Jimmer, Java Chuch, Java Short, Java Targeting, the general Lama to be on the chinking up to serve. Suggested and the water they do that of Majella Jimmer, Mitao Chuch, Mitao Shuch, Mitao Targeting, the general Lama to be on the chinking up to serve. That in there you all. 니리 차단의 저와 좀 맞아요. 탐내봐 인사. 니리 차단의 저와 단용을 나나 치마로 내가 규지 내가 쇼치. 내가 딱이 지금 다 소소 제가 저도 제마도 세버 때데 세버인데 안에 때데 제는 발라마 투배 온데 진길라도 그 공부시.
And so we do our best to maintain this focus of compassion in relation to all the sentient beings all around us. And similarly, this faith, which is the faith of pure faith, of faith of manifest faith, and the faith of conviction, when we focus on the enlightened being in the space in front. And that we also, of course, consider how wonderful it would be if all of the sentient beings were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May this be the case. I will see to it that it is the case. O Guru Deity, please bless me to make this so. And then when we're focusing on sentient beings again, we think how wonderful it would be if all the sentient beings had that happiness that they so desire, happiness and its causes. May this be the case. I will see to it that it is. O Guru Deity, please bless me to make it so. And how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings had the happiness that knows no suffering and the excellent bliss of liberation. May this be the case. I will see to it that it is the case. O Guru Deity, please bless me to make it so. And of course, these are wonderful in a kind of a limitless kind of like aspirations here. But of course, useless without the kind of sense of discrimination that we always have in our minds of, you know, making kind of judgments based on what we like and don't like. And so we need to have that foundation of equanimity to really make the other three immeasurables meaningful. And so how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free from attachment and anger that hold some close and others distant. May this be the case. I will see to it. O Guru Deity, please bless me to make it so.
What that the nigga so that Chavala Lama to on be a good to send a visit the Chabapop, and those were said Kawa Shechawa Chapabne, around the Raga Tawan with Chibone, Mashun, Tomamevan Tibatita, Kabatoyane, the nigga Semeshik and Tawaki on the Padu Tibatic, but none in 2 inches or some subject. And then what did the
So as a result of these sincere supplications, the figure of the Buddha in the space in front responds by sending out 5 colored nectar lights from the heart center with the white light predominant. And as these lights dissolve into ourselves and all the sentient beings all around us, they affect a very thorough purification of all negativities in general, and particularly any obstacles to our being able to generate the 4 immeasurable thoughts to the stage of realization are completely purified.
What did what did the then Yanjo saw the Valatene, and to the doors to the Nanga in Balanaba, to the door Seshi Chawach, several door shoot Chawach, June around the Raganos, Sina Chibone, Marshun, what a Lamatuya Umbuke, Kasodata, to make a Tomak and Regimen, did that.
And so as a result of our supplicating again, the 5 colored nectar lights come forth, this time with the yellow golden light predominant. And again, as it dissolves in through the crowns of myself and all other sentient beings, it really endows us with the special capacity to fulfill the 4 immeasurable thoughts to the stage of realization.
What the compassion? What did they young alata? Chicasora, did they young alata? Pajo, Nianjon Kibuto, Chanju, Sem Kibuto, Yanta Tawa Kibuto. What a meta memoir? What a Chitaja did they Casoda, Juna something Rewatan, and you see that they did catch a more molum jet to the catch a more that delay catch what the Takaja, the good to get the Shemache. Then they do shin and more to betona and then Casoda. Language in Bayanza, that is Joanna, Chicken Yanjo, Jansa, Yanta, Tawamena, Tameva in Bayanza, and Tata Chicaso. Then they young Yagata, and then they young, and a gay cardo. 20 car tango, the gay car teguto. What did it? That younger, same you to go in, and then same with Nada Yakushin Betone, and the Chicasodata, and the Chicasodata, Chicasodata, Casode, no more Bacha Shuchabo Yobache, and a coyu getting us called by him by saying Yobache. That in the year they do, and call and the Taranian around to go to the Tuba Sambo Tamashibaina, and no more gig Yobanza, that to the Tuba Sambo Gazastango, to the Tuba Sambo Tashibaina, I call you the church between you, no more gives a call you by a church between yellow to yet. Do you want to give Yobanza? And Gallica legend, and no more gig Casodata, Bacha that was Pantoina, and got to get a sheet of your insa. And that was the machine yelling was of it. Taking Narazuna, Tangarazo, 2 at the Casana, to the Tubasalo Madan Yungu, to the Tubasamo down to a toilet. The only contestant who does the end change of Shungi, Lodging Shungi, there with what are the some of Tangodes? Let's attend it in the chair and some of dinner Shitangodes. Dinner Shitawa, and it got a king and the king and Bachiba in the and twin yellow to Tobudes. 我的送不多，我的俺的日子，那么特别我光是么呢？兄弟们，这些这边你就这样或者是
And so this development of renunciation, of the mind of enlightenment, and of the correct view of emptiness are, the three essentials of the path, really, to try and generate in our mind streams. Now, we may have every hope or aspiration, we may make, very, heartfelt prayers and so on, but it's important to understand that we, in order to really fulfill these kind of aspirations, we must lay down the correct causes that will lead to these results. And so here then it's important that we understand that in order to generate renunciation, generate the mind of enlightenment, and generate the correct view of emptiness, we need to practice. We need to practice and lay down the causes so that they can become realizations in the mind. And so it's to bring that about, then we must have the conducive conditions to be able to understand, to kind of to be able to lead to generating these causes. And that indeed requires us to know our own mind, to really have a good understanding of consciousness itself and how it works, and how it is primarily at this stage, very much influenced by mental affliction, and that these imprints are there very strongly on our mind. That we are in cyclic existence, which is making it a conducive environment for these mental afflictions, and that we are also not thinking correctly, and that these three aspects are things that are kind of very much against us in our trying to develop renunciation, bodhicitta, and the mind of enlightenment, or the correct view of emptiness. And so it's very important that we are able to counter these particularly inconducive conditions. And the first and foremost part of that is that, when we talk about incorrect thinking, we must therefore correct our thinking, and to really understand where we are. If we can correct our thinking, then we can turn around the sense of an inconvenient or inconducive environment, the cyclic existence, and be able to use those conditions, in fact, for our spiritual practice. And then thirdly, then we can, with that, reduce the power and influence of mental affliction in our lives. And so it's important for us to get our thinking right first, and that is very, very important. And that this is, really one of the reasons why we're here listening to teaching on the Bodhisattva's way of life, to understand what ways in which we can adjust our thinking to get it right. And so we give ourselves the best opportunity to turn around what would ordinarily be inconducive conditions, negative conditions of cyclic existence, and actually turn them onto the path, so that we have that advantage.
Namba yime keba yomare, chulu garine keba yomare, che kemalene keba yomare. Mozo tiga suda to masamlo tang chi machine go tone mozo nyomon keba to. Nyomon keba yina sole ne keba yomare, che kelenge le keba yomare, che kemalenge le keba. Namba yinge le keba yomare, chulu shen le keba. Nyomon ke sabe chala nga keba ta soso keba je yohe koran de bare. Nyomon sen ko min koran kasan dende kigen gansa te la kange tego yoba yinsa. Anti mean the Nyomonsla, Nyomos around Guden Gansala, and the Casorata, don't let you check your ways, Nyomonski Yorba. What did it? Then you may insult. That was a Kate Chayete, Nyomola Kate Chayete. Minkaritana, Chulu Tamanda, Kari Mintaba Inaya, So they got some Nomola because they want to go use that they want to get switching or some Nomo Chigure. Nomo Chigure. That is a motto, Tene by some was a Nomo, the watch of it, Chuk Helena, Malena, that was they want to get it to me to by inside. There was 3 Chigure yourself, Nomo Chigure. There is no more than watch of it, Nomola Catija, the chasing your.
So therefore, whether one is a Buddhist or not, whether one is adhering to any other spiritual tradition, or whether one has no spiritual bent whatsoever, it's still one is open to the mental afflictions if one doesn't have one's thinking incorrect. And so that's why it's something that is kind of runs across the whole kind of like experience of the world, that if one the mind is dominated by mental affliction, there is no happiness. That if the mind is affected by mental affliction, whoever that person is, regardless of whether they're following a spiritual tradition or not, they have a problem. And that problem is that it leads to suffering. The very kind of like etymology of the word is that it's a mental affliction, and that this is causing suffering. And therefore, what is it that we should be opposing? We should be opposing the arisal of, the influence of, the domination of mental affliction. And that's really, really important, that we should initially, therefore, recognize in our own minds what is a mental affliction, what gives rise to mental affliction, what are the triggers for mental affliction, and so on. And to understand that in the whole fundamental purpose of wanting happiness on the other hand, one hand, not wanting suffering on the other, is that the dealing with mental affliction is essential to both of those aspirations.
What did the Imbayinsa, Nomo Kemageta, she would the Nomo Keta Mage Shetua. And then Nomo de and it got so on dinner and Poge Netan condition of Gotsubuto, and it did to condition Kautum Cheguda, that dilla Kabachawaina, and what that chewing Yamnelli Kaba Chagdua, Chagdua. That remember in a Nomo Materna, and it Chaba yes love ne. And the coach, Chabamune the chat with your Maria. Right, the name is not give what was a Chubes to get Chimin Jesse the Eskin the one. No more Matona, a round church or some such, and no more to get another, and Chumay but Genetic Yorba. What did it? And Chubam, you may a mother was rangi. No more Tata Capitano, no more water, take up the Tata Channel, ranch was singing our chat. Migu Chava, yes, must I can't cover your money. What did it?
And so to know whether or not mental affliction has been generated or not, to know how it began, what triggers it, what starts it off, to know the whole situation around why your mind is now afflicted. This is the whole point of spiritual practice, and therefore, when we know all of this information very well, we are in the best position to oppose it and to counteract, and to put in antidotes to it. And this is the very heart of what spiritual practice is, and we should make no mistake about that. That one is if one is not primarily focused on recognizing and opposing mental affliction, then you can't be referred to as a spiritual practitioner. It just doesn't work like that. And that here, if somebody is an expert at being able to recognize and to oppose a mental affliction constantly, they are a pure spiritual practitioner. Even if they don't have the name of that at all, they are doing the job of a perfect spiritual practitioner.
What did the chat? What are the Lisa and Lama to be on Commission Bangana? What are the Casade Junju Shunti? That was say a chat with them because it's some coverless.
And so with that thought in mind, we come to listen to some teaching from the Bodhisattva's way of life. Shoktrang gyatang geju gatni. Gilla diganak so sumba. Sumba tetsam. Doton du zimba chingi lokba. Yinba.
Sumba desam. Zimba sa chinjilo yimba. Or chinjila yimba. Dura zamla kuba. Retaka doba da traba. Any dilla chane, di doing to chetting silver. Sumba desam dun to zimbe, chinjilo yimba la niche. And the dura zamla kuba meva. And Katara de Nyambala Mikawa, de Nyambala Mikawa Chena, and a Chibichoma the Tsuba or what that subject nature. Subject nature. What else? Yeah.
And so we will look at a third of three outlines. The first two, which we covered last week, and they were that mere praise and fame are unnecessary. The second was that just striving for mere sense pleasure is incorrect. And now the third of these, and that it's related to the second, it says, if you are really kind of tied into just striving for mere happiness, then this is a mistake.
What can say? Chita Dota Gomaris, Toba Java, Pemodo Mare, in a Dilla Charsuna, and the can tell you. Rua, Dilla Charsuna, and because we need to do a Genchi Yorba. Dota Rua Penas military Panto Iba Inaya, Toba the Java Majona Panto Mare, Toba the Java Chuguba in a Pantochia. Camera Yena, Pantoya, Miss Angote, Camera Mena, Miss Angomate, tell you what it was. $2 Chansuna, that $2 Meba Yena, Java Yonga Mena Kava, Pento Jacosatan, Pento Jetwa Chumburua. That Dimena, Keta Yongzachilla, Pento Jetuye, Keta Mayon Sachilla, Pento Jematuech. What Chaksuna Yong to one. That the Machana, $2 Yona Mayana Kava Yoma, Mute, Shella Pemba to get it. Shella Pemba to Tosana, Tarangi, that Tibari Medo, Nibaji, don't do many getching. Yina ya Dota de Dende Macha Betona, Dota de Jena, and the schedule to be Yalala draw you good one. Because Doba the Java Yago, you get the gate, Pando Lapcha Chetugua. Chetugua. Yina round Dota la Chaksuna, and it did gauge Yorba. And it did Juna, Chicken, Timajuna, Magic, with the chicken Yonda, that's what Chate Yorba. Oti gets a shake Yorba. And the Java Yina Tana also. Janju Sembe Yamne Chicken take your marry. And Chu chicken when a take your marry. Chu second, Chita Chima Pangela Pengamodan, Church over that is not $60 Chato, $60 Chuma Bachatora.
And so this whole section dealing with praise and fame is not to completely discount fame and praise entirely. What it is counteracting is the attachment to praise and fame. And so this we must be able to proceed. If we have praise, if we receive praise, if we are famous, that it is not inconceivable that we can proceed to be of benefit and more benefit to others. But as long as we don't have attachment to that praise or to that name or fame. And so it's very important that you see in this world, it's often the case that when the camera is present, you have some who are incredibly helpful and beneficial to others. And when you have the camera that's not present, then they are nowhere to be seen, and that they are not out there benefiting or helping or giving. And so this shows that those who are engaging in that kind of game are attached to praise and fame, very much enmeshed in that sort of attachment. Whereas in this context here, it's saying that your objective is to be of benefit to others regardless. If your praise and your fame are kind of beneficial to that, then there's nothing wrong with that. To be able to be of more benefit, to have more reach perhaps, to be able to benefit others. But if attachment is present, it's a pointless activity anyway. And especially in the in context of being a bodhisattva, trying to engage in bodhisattva actions and behaviors, if you're caught up in the praise and fame, which are just objectives of this life anyway, then you're not engaged in a spiritual action at all, and that's very much seen as counterproductive to what your goal is. So again, it's a question of, there's nothing wrong with praise, there's nothing wrong with fame if it is free of attachment, and in fact it can be an advantage because one has more influence and more reach to be of more benefit to others. But if there is any attachment involved in it, then it can be counterproductive. It's an obstacle.
Lenda namila rawa mebas go yor. Pena chanju seme nyamlela ane duwe sanje goma duwe de sanje goma de rangi chedo mare sanje goma de shenge de chedo. Shenge de tachiba juba de semje calm down meba ane samba bala nyawa chita washi de kengo yoba insa ane di kyabala sanje goma ma chona tameba imba insa ode sanje goma de shenge de duwe chedo. Sanje goma de dia tabre do 아니 산제 고마도에 제부 타도 말에 뒤 타버려 생게 되어 좀 배쳐도 라라 내가 남이가 저와 매버시고 또
And so here that again, we're on the Bodhisattva path, that there can be no room at all for attachment to praise and fame, and that saying that if one is operating out of attachment to that, then one is operating in mental affliction. Well, that is a mental affliction, to be attached to praise, needing it, and fame, and so. And of course, then when it's not present, when you don't get it, then there's frustration and anger because you didn't get what you thought you deserved in terms of praise and fame. But from the point of view of a bodhisattva, there will be no difference whether they receive fame or praise or not, because their objective is just to benefit others. There's no expectation from the point of view of a bodhisattva action, not even for enlightenment itself, even though we say we are wanting to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. But from a bodhisattva's viewpoint, the attainment of enlightenment is a means to an end, and the end is to be of benefit to sentient beings. And that's every action that one is doing just solely for others. There's no interest in praise or fame from the point of view of a bodhisattva, that they want to attain enlightenment, yes, in order to be able to know sentient beings that well, every detail of their personality and disposition, of their karmic propensities and so on, in order to be able to diagnose what it is that they need in order to attain enlightenment themselves. And so that is a means in order to be of maximum benefit to all sentient beings without exception.
장주 semba sigdo and gave set second charge and gave set second dige and ngazo kaso jibe chobale and be jibe chobale and kaso leta chikaso deba ko yore jibe chobale deba samlo ting sa jibe chobasa 통중 계좌마다 samlo ting sa sam마도 samlo 자치 못 당마도 괜찮지 어떻게 되지길라 and jibe chobasa yorba jibe choba samlo 찾아 마당 되지 다 장주 semba스도 아니 삼로 당 되겠지 가리 동네비 교리샤 가리 대외 교리샤 이 차상게 아니 가서데 다 지금 남주 민 되겠지 근데 이마 예자다 산지에 고마 주벨레 탑셰 민두 쓰게제 캔 되겠지 그래서 란체쟁게 겨 고토만에 삼로 단에 녀바니 되게 현재적의 연대도 고토만에 삼로 단에 녀바니 되네 아니 제진이 고도전에 다 나한테 지라 다 장주 semba스기로 와
So therefore, in whatever the context, there can be no place for attachment to praise and fame from a bodhisattva's viewpoint. It's completely inconceivable that the bodhisattvas are called the child of the conquerors, and that they are therefore have to you really are living up to a very high standard, a standard that is automatically very tuned to what it would constitute as, for example, the cause of suffering, and what would constitute as a cause of happiness, and is always kind of like looking through the lens of what counts as a self-cherishing thought or action, what counts as an action where one is cherishing others, and to kind of be absolutely convinced as to the benefits of the former versus the degenerative sort of nature of the latter. Sorry, on the other hand, the benefits of the latter, rather, as opposed to the degenerative aspects of the former, being self-cherishing. And so this is sort of like the modus operandi of a bodhisattva, so you can see when they're dealing with what is the best way forward, the best next step forward, it's done so very deeply, very subtly. And so something like attachment to fame and praise will never be part of that equation.
다 ngaranzo disungo 가서 ngaranzo le 당보 아래 이내에 장주 세베 최발은 매바 요래 아니 뒤 전제 요거제 다 냠내 제베 걸로 된데 삼로 코나 어디 뒤 제소 마장 된데 지구로 다서는 계속 시월하겠다 뒤 때나고 요봐 ngaranzo le 당보 아래 아니 라레 당보 이마 워트베 토네 아니 계속 최발 랍게이나 아니 삼로 뒤 제라 단다 가서 단다 가서 in the Chabayina, and it gets a jewel love to your mother. Until they invite the gate to your task, until more Tibetan, until a match of Jigata, because of the water nugget one. To that one.
So what's the meaning here, of course, is that Master Shantideva is very aware that we are kind of like a beginners reading this text and saying, really, don't follow this way of thinking, as he's pointing out from verse to verse about attachment to praise and fame, and saying here that this isn't the way to go. And so it's kind of like really just cautionary advice for us, and in order to distinguish between what is the activity of a bodhisattva and what isn't.
다 되네 이마자 다다 딜라 sabje ni jene 던다 잠라 고바 메바들 자왈레 자베 던도 노르도시 다니 장네 쇠제나 식도 남지 지시자 신나 되고 술라 대자.
So this third outline then was that to strive just for that sort of happiness and to grasp onto it is a mistake, and this is dealt with in two subheadings. And that saying that mere praise and fame is unnecessary. And secondly, when that degenerates, it causes discontent, and that is acting like a child. Verse number 92 we'll look at the first of these points, that is the unnecessariness of praise and mere praise and fame. So verse number 92 reads, if for the sake of fame I give away my wealth or get myself killed, what can the mere words of fame do then? Once I have died, to whom will they give pleasure?
값을 배봐 들려 잡아이나 오다 심지어 우바 강에 유견 된다라 펜베 삼바 군에는데 와다 펜베 삼바 군에 오디 된치가 마긴 심지어 안데다 오다린 가라 벤조 팀비주 여버데 아니 디텐데 강에 유견 대치라도 나라 구급지에 삼는다 펜바도 대 심지어 탐제기도 산재 공부도 배출이 좋아서 선들 펜바도 오다 양다바래 다가 내생게 제 단다디 전에 펜바도 바데 디 규제는 디 규제는 같这个三界恐怕头上也去个对这当本地的经验是进度不说，人家大地的判判那些什么叫他们家的那些判托说，啥地的几把呢？我打几把在这的，打的嘛不是眼底几把一呢？没说我什么上不去，这是个没养活这是个的，人家几把钱呢？看出个俺的故乡这个的是，现在让我看完了，哪这个要的，做大地是个要吧？我觉得，
And so in the case here of talking about generosity, here, of course, it really depends on one's motivation, isn't it? That if one's, motivation for giving in a particular instance is to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, and to see that these beings here, as the object of one's generosity, are poverty-stricken in a desperate state, and that you're seeing that as a great opportunity then for me to practice my generosity, and you understand that this creates a cause that will be of help, and you pray that through the cause of my giving this single act of generosity, may I be able to give to all sentient beings in the future. May I be able to give them the gift of Dharma into the future. Now, if you're able to give with that sort of motivation, then that's excellent. One is able to engage in generosity with the bodhicitta motivation, and that's wonderful. However, if one is giving and simply saying, I'm a very good person for giving in this instance, I'm hoping to get some good respect for this, then we're saying that is a mistake. That is an attachment that is giving there, and so that's a mistake.
And politician, election,
politicians saying, yes, this will get me more votes.
Yeah, what the lesson of that, but the Kuno not take it over the country, social land and Namila Jawa part time is what the list go. What the legend down to watch, what the list check. That demon Bajana, so the Penjo Yovadana, Java Yong Echedo, Migu Gushab Yong Echedo, that said the again, Digi Timbuchil, Rewa Kajan, that jet the wine water, not take yours water, what the letter. And Tagalisha rotten. Water and a power that Java Donata, or meet the power that Sekirachabo Yong and the Cheto and the chicken. That Malatronata, she say that to be that in the Jetigan. That the Kerachabo or the hero is in taking your echelon. And the social Jakacho, the Takaji. So again, because of that, so the saw on that, because a chicken can dedicate general, so called a Lutanjan, and so to take it. What then they get. And that means you actually then the chicken, that's a Buyora. Shiva. A third target, 6 to some, then the third target, 6 to some latter, Caripent or Shishi Chate. That in a Malata than the Dubari, Negation, Chiwa Yaba, Namchi Yeme. That Chiva a chima of Kaya Pentogo Yomata. Kaya Pentogoma, Sanga Lugu Pentogomare, Rangi Juchala Tom Pentogoma, said a big Pentogoma, that said the Geta de Caripento. And she told the Caripentogus. She was not third day. They got the Sula Dewaki, but that's Sula Dewaki. Rota Pentos, the Guru to watch Kora. And what in the summer time was summer was and the Latin and $3 Machapach Gurias. And the Rota Kali Java in a Simjing Dula Pantoya, Simjing Digi Gula Joya Chet watch. Dodala Chapa make its chorus.
So therefore, you know, in our context of trying to engage in Bodhisattva actions, there is absolutely no expectation of anything in return when one is engaged in generosity. And so it's very important that is the case. And especially in this particular case, where the other example of the person who goes into war with the objective of gaining a hero's reputation, and that saying how futile and how idiotic that is, and especially if one gets killed because of that, then you can engage in nothing whatsoever. You just, you know, you're just mere words in somebody's memory from there on in. And so that is the case. And so we understand this, you know, from in our context, to say death is definite anyway. The time of death is indefinite, and there's nothing at all that will be of any benefit to you at the time of death, except your spiritual practice. Your body will be no good to you. Your possessions, of course, will be no good to you. Your relatives and friends will be no good to you. And so we have to see what is real and what is important. And therefore, it's pointing out here that in faced with death, praise and fame are completely and utterly unnecessary. And that here, that because in a life which is dedicated for the benefit of sentient beings solely, their praise and fame are completely irrelevant.
What are the social Pemba Tribune, Pemba de Simja Tamjak and the Sanjak Komato Guru show, said the Tele, when a Dana, Chi Kalamasonata, meaningful in Chagdua. Rata, Chadorwa, and the day you buy Inza, and it did Jabade and Chima Penjala, and Tiki Gula to the Simja Pemba to the Lapcha, the Joy Gula to it, and you would what I did Jima Inza, what I was a Samuel Tanda, the Manoj go those, and Chicasa. Teddy Digi Donda sort of Chang Jedeva Ina, and a Sosuke Gasola. Don't trouble to realize naked was. The reason Marazon media, missing the mixed kitchen and Namju Yore, and Namju Bejutane, don't lapchable to Tobayina, and it said the dog Nyanda last what it cited better. The Machabayina, young to it, Chapa ticket, and judgeable to be good judgeable to be new Yoba Insa. The Machabacha, so the J, the Pitabu, Puno Yabukan, Jeva Ina, and the Jeva de Latenet, they are the younger, site epetre. Younger, and the younger day, and the social page to Dua, and got Sagni, Teva Yomashaka, but Sagni Garzana, don't love to put away like cake chickito. Ruata, Sanjay Gomba, you to really cake chickito, Taba to really cake chickito, Kawachima Digi, only cake chickito. And the gate chicken thing was and rang Namju Beju Tang Hatu Bachene, Jonta Chunju Chilla Ching the Java ina. And it's Shabbat Goka, that Mother Shabbat, Lachable to Vegeta, Summer Town on the and Teba the Trakwata and Nigur Shabdos and the site where you don't take it for. This about Namju Beju Tani. And then Kotige, Jachable Summer Town and Nega the Rangshu, you don't take it to. And it kept on chat.
And so when we are looking into what is beneficial, what is most beneficial here, of course, to engage in activities with the objective of attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. This is the motivation that should dominate every action that we engage in. And this is what will make life meaningful. And that to, you know, all of that, you know, is to kind of like see that whatever occurs, maybe because of that, you might have more renown, more praise, more fame, but see that just as a mere side effect. Now that maybe it will give you more capacity to be more beneficial to more people, and that's good. But one's underlying motivation must never change: to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. and it never must in any way kind of like be allowed, that fame and that praise to be allowed to be an obstacle, you know, whether it's an obstacle to our attaining enlightenment, an obstacle to our attaining liberation from cyclic existence, or an obstacle to our gaining a positive rebirth in the next life. To see that for what it is, use the kind of like the most valuable characteristic of being a human, our human intelligence, to be able to kind of see through the kind of like the how do you say, the what is of value in the long term, what is the big picture, as opposed to just short-term praise, short-term fame in this life, and to go, you know, that just going for short-term gain like that is wrong. It's a counterproductive, and it acts as an obstacle to our overall objective. Again?
Those called what they come to success.
Ah, yeah.
Responsible. Kanje Kasura. Missing the mixing cage of the big Namju and Namju D Tone and Kaso long was a bejo down to Wayina and also Kaso Digi Jumune to Tugurua. Chita can get Digi to Guyore. In a Namju Madan and a Digi Gachi Jonda and a Pu Daluda, not what you want to get your. That's it, Digi Kora Chana Jet and a Pu double to Matu. You want to get your what did it? And what did it? That the name is said the Chimale Tabale, Tamjaki get out in it. Get out in it. And then a Tamjaki Pomang to reach to Karichabaina and go Jigga got the Tamjaki Poma Matoga buggy and digi and the site temperature you want here. The mother said digi and the site temperature you want here, you want to. Young day, young do what the getting also more to be tone and because of the some logo draw down a tone and digil to down. Because the psychological draw down this ship at the kitchen motor. Because contagion by in a for accident general your mother, contagion by the rick to be Yonku Yuba or Taka. So that good water material and one matter all the accident journalists. You may came in a young also than the mother. Nobody in Savage called Jula Tango. You dare Rick to be Jula Tango, you are for your mother. Then they may say, was okay. Diki Lapchabo desert, the Rick to be Jula Tenet to go with you, and the Jagler to encourage a house of the tonner and take the car. Take the car and dig you to Tuina, never with Diki to get the Rangshu on the edge. Yonder, what that consular? San Diego Sova Mare, Kunjo Sova, the Casana, natural law. Totan Tagara.
So yes, to use this quality that we have as human beings, our human intelligence, to be able to kind of live a happy life, and to be able to see, you know, what is more important is just this life's happiness, to see that future life's happiness is more important, and more important than that is the happiness of liberation, and the more important than that is the happiness related to full and complete enlightenment. and that the happiness that we can experience in this life is just a side effect. It's a side effect of doing the right thing, you know. And it's you know, what we are really aiming at is more permanent, stable, kind of pure happiness, and that's our thinking is how to establish that happiness into the future, and that if we're doing the right thing in this life, then we will have, yes, the side effect occurring of happiness, because whatever happens to us is nothing happens by accident, that everything happens in accordance with its cause and its conditions. And so therefore, you know, in what we're, you know, what we have control is in a way these causes and conditions, laying down these causes and conditions, and to lay them down well in order, and then also to stop the obstacles to our being able to engage in you know, the causes and conditions of stable permanent happiness. And that if temporary happiness occurs for us, that's good. We see it as a side effect. There's no need to get too excited about it. It's something that's happened, but it's not something that the Buddha has given us or that God has granted us. It is a natural law, and that we have laid down the cause to experience this particular experience right now. And that's the way it occurs, that the law of cause and effect is very, very accurate in that sense.
가서 단다디 가서 떠달라 착바디 떠바다 작화용이 주말에 떠달라 착바디 떠바다 작화용이 개그래 먼저 주래 정도디 주말에 개그래 떠달라 떠다 용하데 셀라 편바 주베야 돼 셀라 편바 주나 딜라 때는 떠다 용이여래 착바이나 디 개그지기여래 아니 다 떠다 마용아 가라 용해디 매버체 디가는 딜레 착바를 대부 치보지 두고두고 열대 뒤두배라 아니 랑이 돌아 다시는 도와 돌아 다시는 도와다 안 대부 충동질에 차온데 안 대차발할 때는 대부대 그 유대 차가 말다야 내가 열디 요마요 내가 열에 다 딜레 되게 쇼바나시 심지 탐제도 산제 고마토베 규를 주가 쇼서 디 체도 안 편바 두배이나 아니 저바다 잡아 되게 되고 랑수고 요는 뒤 용하면서 뒤 삐다고 용 되게 도와 뭐다 되게 된 거죠 삼로당당의 만호에 돈에 아니 규두다도 넘어서나 대부 푸순 소바 정도로 와 유라 노르소나 유 노르소나 아니 대부 푸순 소바 연구 말이야 뭐다 되게 돼 거기 준대기 아니 가서대 조단디게 아니 마초와 만호와 아니 고를 마초와 제디 개체버도 와
And so here, again, we're talking about the praise and fame operating with and without attachment. It's just chalk and cheese, really. If you're operating with attachment, then your praise and your fame are obstacles. And if you're operating with praise and fame without any attachment, and then you're completely focused on using them to benefit others. And then in that sense, it can be a great benefit. And, you know, but if you are thinking of, you know, oh, I'm so great, I'm so famous and so well known, and you're attached in that sense, then what you have managed to do is to attain a great result, actually. And now you've thrown it away in one fell swoop, wasting it. And so it's kind of like, really, you know, if we want, you know, fame and praise can only be beneficial when they act or arise kind of like naturally and automatically. And that comes from really dedicating your life to the benefit of all sentient beings. And for their benefit, you're doing everything. Now, you can become renowned for that. You can be well praised for that. You can become famous on that account, and that. But you will keep that the law of cause and effect firmly in your mind, and that knowing that situation, knowing that if it kind of like proceeds in an unmistaken way, in the right order, in a complete fashion, that you will not be thrown by it. You will not allow that fame and that praise to become an obstacle to your objective of benefiting sentient beings.
Migawa as a Migawa Jibata Tumbani is a Rangi Dubada Jabati and Casada chicken, Jabala Kashe Cake, and Nova Get and Dubada Tawan Mavachaya, the Deg Juayinda, and the La Semajiba Cheata. Chaptuna Tati Johnson, Semajiba Chagduata. That is a Semajiba, the Magawa Jibata, and Chivichova the Chibaris. And yet that Yamba and Migawa, you know, the Gaza Jabala Chane Yoguata, Chane. And it developed Jumazona and it demand Yabayina and Semajiba chatting. That did it join up because that is Pukuchunju was that Jibas the Tonju Yomar, Pukuchunju was some long Yomara, some Tanda Tanga Yomarwa, but some Tanda Madame Gerso. Jibechova the Tumbas. Jibas in the Tonju, the Rikijamata, Jibas the Caso de Getchambo, the Tonju Jevakijamata, in a Jibacho was some Nessa Madama, Jiba, some Nessa Madama, Jibaya, Sojon Yaboche, and a Lapta Latang, and it is Tango the whole Yajet the Tango Yorba, Nessa Malon, but Yon Lonchito. Then the Jibacho was Jimmy Cambo did you not Jiban and Gache. The Asian third John Yamna, Ranges Seme, Jibashin Sam.
And so then the second of those two subheadings was when that praise and fame degenerates, then we dislike it. It's like acting like a child. Verse number 93 points out, when their sandcastles collapse, children howl in despair. Likewise, when my praise and reputation decline, my mind becomes like a little child. And so here it's pointing out that child can become unhappy. It's not in any way looking down on children, of course. It's really saying that a child's capacity to really think very expansively is quite limited. So they're very kind of focused on everything at hand. And when their sandcastles broken down, they can howl in despair, as it's saying here. But it's making that comparison between the way children think and the way we act when our reputation declines or so on. We don't get the praise that we expect, and so we become very frustrated, and that's childish.
But also me some look and so Jemag in the Suez, Matiba and she would Lombada Mago, Yungumarwa. But that was the Kenshu Mati progress something Yorba. Then the Kenshimusha Zigamarwa, Yogumarwa. And Pukuchunjula, Korangi Ninjata, because of the beast and the Pukuchu so good one needed Jamag. So what are the Chiki just Kumaga, she Ninja? Yongurwa, that was the Koran Geshe would see your water. What is Suguyor? Tata, Pena Jime Combat Tiba Juba in a Jiban and a Casino, Taka, the Yidachi of Wood, what up, you remove the wood, the rest of my Jibacha. Though, Toba the Dragon Yambayina, Megawatin, Ranges and the Jibash and Jurosa.
So yes, what it's pointing to here is that whatever is important in the eyes of the one who is being referred to, like a child and their sandcastles, they consider the quality of their sandcastle to be so important. If that is destroyed, then of course it sends them into howling despair. But it's also pointing out that those who are very attached to praise and fame, and if their reputation is damaged, they have that same, considering it to be all important to who they are, and therefore they will suffer a lot, and they kind of like complain and like a child. And it just points out the example there for a child, when their sandcastle is destroyed, they howl in despair. And then for another whose praise and fame degenerate, that dislike is similar to the thinking of a child.
So me the catchable and Chunju Meva China, she would catch up with Zigamarwa. So me the catch and she would come and take it. But Namju Yamle Bazigate catch to the Tabata Tamji Kaba Yimba 세티게 안에 소소 대박하면 막아대 개체만 맞아 디스템 죽으면 도와 다 개와치마 번째 개말랭게 안에 저 가서래 아니 저기 타바다 탐제 개말랭게 된데게 안에 세티 개체 뭐 시원 차다 세티게 돈다 또 맞대 맞게 봐자 수살 지게다 뭐 용되기도 와 그와 안 디프레션다 안에 론리스다 되게 용되게 가르치는 용거자 세티 개체 뭐지 안에 네 마주도 강한 제되기도 와 그 따사도 충다르와 타바다 탐제 개마다 심지어 탐제도 산제 고마주에 된데 그 미샤원도 아니 그 저게 세디 아니 대박하면 막아는데 개체 뭐 매도 아니 대박하면 막아주도 강한 책임도 와 강한 맞아요 가라 되게 튕겨를 줘야 용도도 와 그 삼로 야치 종게
It really comes down to the vastness of, or otherwise, of one's objective, of course, isn't it? For somebody who is objective is to work towards enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, and they're genuine in that. And that practitioner is not going to be that upset by whatever occurs in this life. They will not be able to put that much importance on all of the things that occur in this life. Whereas others who don't accept future lives or working towards liberation or enlightenment, they don't accept any of that. Then they're stuck with really having to analyze the affairs of this life as something very, very important to them. And so if something small that occurs in this life can have a great impact on their mindset. And that shows just a very kind of narrowness and small-mindedness of that kind of being. And so that can lead to so many issues of suicide, loneliness, and depression, and so on, where where a person's desires are not fulfilled in this life.
가서 굉장히 건가 영화 코라 영화 가서 디 코아래 코아스도 그 딱다지 영화로 딱다지 영화래 딱다지 뭐도 그 영화 코라 영화래 아니 그 굉장히 마상와 망고지 영화 되거든 마상한테 맞게 받쳐도 와다 디 임바 인사 디 코아 임바 인사 디 코아들 타바 제국도 삼로 당한데 아니 걸 동네 제도도 와 동네 제도도 와 아니 딜라 마차고네 아니 코에 동네디 동네 여바던 워터인데 딜레 디기게 랑 니버체네 아니 코알에 타야 타바 줍도고도 안 대자마자 심제 탐제 코알에 타투에게 탐제 집에 고마 주게게 아니 니버체 되네 제도도 와 동네데 동네 이바 워터인데 아니 코지 제도도 와
And so we really have to, first of all, accept that we're in cyclic existence. This is a broken realm, one where there's no perfection, where it's incomplete. And so, any kind of suffering that arises there must be looked at in that context and say, what else can we expect? You're in that situation. And so, because it's cyclic existence, you gotta say, and because I need to gain liberation from cyclic existence, I must accept what's occurring here. I must accept this particular suffering, and that this will allow me to aim towards greater objective of liberation. And once that is, and from there I can expand my motivation to attain the state of omniscience, of enlightenment. And so here, all of this comes from really recognizing the suffering state that I'm in, and to kind of become an expert at accepting suffering on the one hand, avoiding it on the other.
다 교보대 매와 차네 내가를 내 무리 또 서도 무리 좀 차서나 야 교회 강에 파 매와 차네 야 유예배 강에 고주고 도와 다 가제 강바 매나 강바 매배 강에 도와 얘나 강바 매와 대 무리 수에 전에 강바 녀도나 강바 매배 강에 파 잡아대 야 강바 유예배 강에 차고 도와 고주 도와 다 집어지야 다 배나 보고다 보고 매겐데 보고 거기도 서나 야 보고 매배 강에 도와 이제 다 보고 이제 좋은데 보고 매배 강에도 파자가도 보고 여배 강에도 고쳐온 것도. 가다 네가 야고 삼다 동네 그라시 레도다. 동네 그라시 레도아. 가바 삼다 마이네. 초 가바 삼다 마이네. 로아 랑게 야랑네 다 마네 보도 인데 예베 갑다 가바 초 가바 삼다네 사티다 딱다레샤 야고 또 삼사 요커라 요바. 그래서 코인베 다된 것도 봐. 다 되네. 문에 다네 디기 되거든. 다 디날 빈다 용해 거려 요 맞다.
And so this relates to us all, isn't it? Whether it's ourselves we are referring to, or to all others that we're referring to, there's nobody that we can point to who is without problems. It's the nature of where we're at. Everybody encounters issues. The poor have the problems of being poor, but then should they, have some good fortune and gain some money, then the problems of being poor are finished with, but the problems of being rich are only starting. And so then they have the problems of being rich. You have the problems of the homeless who have no house, but then they come across some money, they're able to buy a house. They no longer have the problems of being homeless, but now they have the problems associated with house ownership. And the same goes for every other aspect of life. If you are childless and you really want a child, then you suffer because you are childless. But then you have a child, you gain a child, and then you have the problems of raising a child. All of these things are so because we are living in a reality which is in the nature of suffering. And so from the moment we get up in the morning till the time we go to bed at night, we're dealing with issues. And nobody can kind of go to bed and sleep and say, oh, that was an absolutely perfect day and absolutely nothing went awry. That is not an option for us. And that it's always the case that we have problems.
Kanje de ya to sa kasode saje kansa ke zawa de danze mari ba je ngozo kam ha to ani mutune ta saje nyawale pungo de lansa de an dunga mutune le to tanda ngozo lo니 somje covid ke kanga shiu chasa de covid ke kanga marda covid nga kanga de ngara saje nyawale pungo kanga re tende yesa ngozo lockdown je go do de to ta kanje saje nyawale pungo gyun de ka ma do bodong ngara do dunga re.
So really, it's, wherever we are still open to, prone to this suffering, that which is in the nature of suffering, the reality that we are in, and that that can be manifest as the suffering of suffering, manifesting as sickness and disease and so on, the actual pain and the suffering that we can feel, but more so is the suffering of change, that deception that we are living under, where, we are seeing pleasure as something painful. No, sorry, something, that which is painful as something pleasurable. In other words, that we think that the happiness that we experience, but we go through it again and again and again and again, wherever we are, that whatever we experience as, that we can label as pleasure, is going to turn into pain. It's going on to turn into displeasure. And the classic example is that, we are too hot, and so we turn on the air conditioning to cool down, and that there's a brief respite from the heat, where we can feel the pressure of the coolness coming in, but before long, of course, it crosses that threshold of what is tolerable, and now it's too cool, and of course we wanted to heat it up again. And so this constant adjusting, because we can never find the perfect state to be in, and that this is this is part of this world, and it's more specifically part of the contaminated aggregates that we have come into this world with, this body-mind continuum, and that we are always prone to suffering because of that. And that's where we really must concentrate, until we have been able to put a stop to getting reborn again with these appropriated contaminated aggregates. We're always going to be prone to suffering, always going to be mired in suffering, really. And so we have to go into this and say, how then does this arise? We are talking about, again, the karma that we accumulate, the imprints that lays down, and that the suffering that arises on the basis of these imprints, and that and we kind of like, we must try and put a stop to it, but it has to go back into what starts things off, and it's the ignorance of grasping a true existence of a self, and that from that ignorance, then we accumulate karmas. These karmas lay down the imprints on our mind. These are activated at the time of death by grasping, craving, and grasping, and projects us into the next set of appropriated contaminated aggregates, and it keeps going on like that continuously. And so here, that we must be able to put a stop to the process by which we are reborn with these appropriated contaminated aggregates, and that means we must get to the point, get to the heart, or the root issue, and that is that ignorance that starts the process off. And that's where we're talking about. So we can have the last several years where we said we were all having to deal with COVID, and that we're blaming the restrictions and the lockdowns and so on COVID, but of course it wasn't COVID. It was the fact that we had these contaminated aggregates that are prone to sickness, and therefore it's the sole kind of like the hard reason why we've had such difficulty with COVID and other pandemics and so on. So it's like these contaminated appropriated aggregates are like a container for suffering.
That's the Dunga Pumbu, you gave a Ningane, or the Kevin got other parties, you tangle the Daka, Kevin Ningane, Mashi for the Dunga Yunga, and book Chesadwa.
So, that's when we talk about our birthday and the time we were born, so we always mark it as some sort of a celebration. But in fact, the moment you're born, you've already booked in your death. So that's what's more significant about your birthday.
Because any Mashi for the Dunga Chazanta and Tamashito booking Chesadwa. Confirm Chesadwa. What that Neta the Resha, that didn't net on the email that then that Dunga about it, but the water, and it Dunga the Jukarija session. Because a Dunga never saw Dunga, you never saw Matona and Dunga Yontic. You never saw na, and because they would Dunga the Yongo Marwa, they would Dunga the Yongo Marwa, Juka, that's in Mariba. Teacher, that's in Mariba. What other that get that Shumo, what teacher get a Mochato, Tate lecture. The lady in the that what the lady in the Taka Mumbe on the jail, that and that they get there, Moto Tanda Dilla Chak de Casa, because of the $3 Chak de Mumbe onge, $3 to get Chak, but they get sort of Panda Mabia, Machima, Mumbe onge, Mariba onge, and $3 Chane, and it Jebu love Chimo Young, I don't to God, but that did not. When it's enough, $3 Machawaina, they would love Chimo to go to that, Yoel, Kexo, the Mumba Mariba onge Chigudwa. Mumba Mariba onge got to the social getting you.
And so, yes, that this idea that the moment we're born, we have booked our date of death, and at the same time, and so therefore it becomes really incumbent upon us to analyze suffering in more detail, and specifically to deal with the cause of suffering, and to kind of understand how that cause of suffering goes back to the ignorance of self-grasping and so on. And so to be able to deal with it at that level is very, very important. And kind of like say, when we're under the influence of this kind of confusion in relation to what we're talking about, praise and fame, of seeing something kind of like really desirable and being attached and so on to that, I'm seeing that attachment is coming out of that sense of confusion about what is really the cause of suffering, what is not. And so here, attachment to praise and fame is kind of really saying something that could be a great kind of a great source of tremendous benefit. It's being wasted on your behalf, is kind of by yourself there, and that you're kind of minimizing what could otherwise be kind of a maximum result because of your attachment.
What the Lord, I can tell Marazu get Namchu Mata Ganges you want to go. What take a mobile Marie with Chang with water. The legend, the lady by Zanda can judge China and Zambolina Lola and Chicken Casada, Chulu just much of it. Tumba to get Lapja Best, Sambo, the Yabu Yara, Sambuchi, Samba Sambuchi, Jamba Comia, Soba Comia. What up? To get Lavik Yachambo, you're there. You know, Koyets are what Narazu. Dunga you had a call by inside Dunga Yungu Yore, and the Koya Zawati, Tanzi Maribare does Tengen data, Sangajum did the Yakir do Shabat Yomare. That's Chulu Kanga da Caso the Rawange Matubaina, Rawange Rata, Rawange Matubaina, Metu do Samsange, and then they to touch in the town with that. Sangajum did take it, Rawange to use on your money, sing the Tameto Shara Tenga, Sanja Yakir. That the name by inside, taking it. Yakuji Shemba, or that Sanja, don't buy Shanda Minda, but the dinner water is what. 그래서 다음에 또 배셔라 란줄로 맞죠 봐나 코에 자와를 늦게 두고도 아니 코에 자와지 빵 마방 봐도 동에 못 들어오고 다 진짜 코에 자외 님보다 다음에 또 코에 자와 단지 말이고 뒤 님보 다음에 또 배셔라 뒤 땡게 그 또마다 파세 앉아 또마 양지를 봐
And so therefore, it this kind of thinking is really a failure to use our intelligence properly and to kind of really be kind of sense, as it were, this working under a sense of confused ignorance as to how to deal with praise and fame, etc. Indeed, all other mental afflictions wisely. And so here, it's really important to kind of look back and think of how, on the one hand, all other spiritual traditions have given us tremendous teachings and teachers down through the centuries and deserve our respect, and they have great teachings on generosity and patience, etc. But when it comes to the root of cyclic existence, and really pointing out this particular ignorance of self-grasping and indeed the wisdom of selflessness to overcome that, only the Buddha has pointed this out. And that it's really important to kind of talk about that, because the self in when other religions look at the self, if they are presented with the idea that the self is something which is not truly established, then they conclude that means that it is therefore non-existent, which is of course not the point at all. But from the Buddha's point of view, we could see that this grasping at true existence is this ignorance, and that is the root of cyclic existence, and pointing out that to overcome, to uproot that, one develops the wisdom of selflessness. And so it's only the Buddha who has pointed this out, and that he deserves then particular respect and praise for that.
뭐여기 내주 뒤임바래 뭐여기 내주 뒤임바데 상계 좀 된 되게 아니 뭐도 주네 로아 뭐도 주네 안다디 뭐도 주네 아니 다 투제베 코네 다 말아줄 템바래 아니 뒤 템바디 아니 저뒤 장녀르샤 가서 산제게 가서데 젠다 아니 감담해봐 나줘봐지 뭐 인자 아고 나줘봐 인자 아니 저게 남라인 나서봐 줘래. 근데 인바에서 리카셰 다 장된 차대기요. 리카셰 예된 차대기요. 아니 예된다 장된 가리 인바데 아니 벤지타 속에 리베 땡라 밤네 제바제 온도 아니 다도 마주바 땡바데 어떤 예된 인바데 다도 마주 예된 인바데 아니 루그리게 땡라 밤에 된되니 아니 내줘봐 다 두쟁 계줄라 속에 코나 속에 내줘봐 속에 냠솔라네 아니 디 냠솔랑 와라 때네 아니 똑바게 두겐치 로아 디 töbe 되는데 삼중글로게 아니 삼중을 예반예바데 아니 검중가 세도 되는 검네 아니 살랑가 똑바ည네 예 되제 아 주베 온조 쪽에 아니 똑바건도 주네 다디 뭐여래도 다 데레스 냠솔랑 와 때는 똑바데 제기 도다스는 벌써 다 가자 가서 다 프로브 제바치 어떤데 차대기 요랬음.
And so, it's the Buddha deals with the actuality, and that he has, directly seen what he has been talking about to be true, and that these, as he taught for many years to many different types of people with many different dispositions and indeed capacities, and that these teachings were thereafter collated and then analyzed and collated into that which were definitive and that which were interpretative teachings. And that teachings where the Buddha pronounced on the true existence or lack of true existence of a self, and these were considered to be definitive teachings. And thereafter, they were put to the test by yogis in their practice who meditated. And so the great kind of interpreters, or those great collators like Nagarjuna and Chandakirti and Buddha Palita, who kind of analyzed all of these teachings and kind of were able to assemble all of the teachings then into different categories that were definitive on the one hand, interpretative on the other. And all the teachings referred to as those dealing with the true nature of existence were considered to be definitive teachings. And that then they were thereafter put to the test by the great yogis, the meditators, who meditated on them, generated on the wisdom relating to learning, the wisdom related to contemplation through analysis, and finally, the wisdom related to meditation, where they are able to develop or to realize directly the import of these teachings and thereby affirm them and prove them. And so this is the way in which the teachings have come down to us.
믹스에 상계 좀 되게 안에 최대라다 지난 출로 건거 랍자 배상 부여도 상계 좀 되게 출로들 구양 붙여 그래서 제바제 상계 좀 되는 게 결론다가 캐난지 세제 다외 세수 렉바달라 나이가 랑와 자이 구실면서 나라 저 구바 유배 측에 남자 캐는 말스 세른 요견 속에 아니 제또 달라서 배 지구 여바 인사 뒷낭신전에 아니 얘가 송될 제바제 우리라는 김자 통고도나 아니 냠솔라 소이 바자 그거 구가저 소수가 돈하제 제바제다 아니 대제발 뭐지 처음 거와 어디래.
So it really falls to us now to actually see, can we affirm in the same way this process by which the teachings were given, analyzed, collated, and then realized. And so we need to go through the process of checking and analyzing in the same way. And is it like that? Is it really like that? And that's why the Buddhist teachings are so vast, and because they have been put to this process. And indeed, this was nothing more than the Buddha himself insisted on. He said, monks do not pay me respect because I'm the Buddha. Do not accept what I have said because I'm the Buddha. You have to approach the teachings in the same way as a gold buyer would approach the buying of gold, that he wouldn't accept the metal that he was presented with just like that. He would have to analyze the metal by burning it, by cutting it, by rubbing it to ensure that it was the gold that he was going to spend money on. In the same way, you must put my teachings to the same test of analysis to see can they be verified as true.
근데 이마서 가서나 제바 마제바나 교양가리 열선 산제가 로마라 아니 가서래 로마 타야바 있자 아니 감도 매번 나서봐 줘래 감도 매번 나서봐 있는데 아니 최들래 감도 매번 나서봐 거네 때마 용되고 근데 이자 아니 녀된다 장도가 야와야고 체마도나 야와야고 체마나 똑바게래 누구로와 근데 이마 인자 아니 가르니 장되는샤 가르니 녀되는샤 제바 마제나 아니 가솔에 다 간자제 제바 마제바 이나 아니 뭐 여기 내서 다 소소 감 가솔다 뭐 여기 내서 뭐 마저바 이나 아니 또 바뀌라 누구로 와 뒤에서 제바 제고요래 그래 어디래.
And so that the disciples of the Buddha were very many and vastly different personalities and dispositions. And so if they did not have this process of analysis of really trying to determine what of the Buddha's teachings were interpretative and what were definitive, then this would be harmful to realization, to being able to gain realization. And so this is why this process was entered into to facilitate realization.
And
let's leave it there for today. I'm sorry I didn't get very far.
No.
So then bring our minds to focus again on the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front.
Never Majona, Keva, called to me, Tony, and the Dilla Tato Lomajana, call a Tato Yungu Mari. Today is a calling ever during a Georgia Combashet, Rota, Chicasoleta, what in the Combashet.
And so then, just as we've been discussing, cyclic existence is a state in which they can find no definitive happiness, and that here, even though it's the suffering of change, we grasp onto it as a kind of a happiness, but it's contaminated happiness, and so all of cyclic existence is in this nature. And so we want to gain definite emergence from cyclic existence, and so we develop that mind of renunciation.
And
that mind of renunciation is symbolized by a mandala, a lotus mandala seat on our own crown.
That Chinanga choken in a China choken you didn't the Juba singing that Juba singing the you didn't the Juba. Now I send the quota to and Dilaten, Chatang Lomo, which on the dog water. That is that choken by in there. Ya Koi net and Mark net and changing by in it. Ya Tabata Tamjik by in by net. Net and condition, you didn't Juba singing, do some memory. Because I remember it was a memory. That you done the cousin called Togway Partasm. Togway Partasm. Tabina, you get Chachella in the troop. Because you didn't do in a Chachella, don't go, but Chachella, don't go to Kalil, you didn't do to maybe that thing. Then you might that you didn't do what do I mean to son of Kota Chovach, don't same shop. Don't want you got a same door, Shakachakasam, the same shop. Then gave a lot, and Chibo Peme Tendo, and you making what Yakawachi to so Santa Kopacha.
And then how all internal and external phenomena lack any objective existence. And that here, we talk about all phenomena in that way, that whether within cyclic existence or related to the omniscient state of enlightenment, that all phenomena lack any objective existence. They are merely imputed by thought, merely imputed independence upon cause and condition, or independence on parts. And this proves that therefore they cannot in any way arise objectively off their own bat, independently. And so they can't be objectively existent. And when we reach that kind of point of the mere absence of the object of negation, and then we place placement meditation on that for a moment, and that then brings forth the theory of emptiness, which is symbolized by the sun mandala seat on our crown.
And Teneta, you didn't do a member in Zanko, Tene Jungare. That you get the Soina, Okata de Juti, you did the soil, then you want to get all. That Semja Tamjek to the Sanje Comas again there, and Jig D to Takanjaje 장주 그 셈 양답에 따와 안다가니 신这个做萨就拉啊，日本甚至周围呢，我打三节恐怕是的都比越这个去，或者让完的周围呢，他靠这个就给了嘛，让完的周围呢，靠脚打也嘛，我他个让完的没周围一般一啥就给操吧人呢，安尼得用个有吧人上，得都个有吧人上，哦，打三节恐怕是个的，我那场呢。或主义有吧？其实，但主义有吧就马主本来，但早晚年的职员没多上山进来，你甚至他们这个都3年恐怕就马中他们天女王你都做吧，这个都上山的这3G是吧？我的这个。
So then we of course on the basis of all phenomena lacking any objective existence, meaning that they can arise independence, gives us the possibility of being able to accumulate the whole collection of causes and conditions to lead to certain results, and that we can actually from that premise we can accumulate the causes to be able to realize the 5 paths and the 10 grounds of the Bodhisattva, and to indeed attain the state of enlightenment itself in order to benefit all sentient beings. And this is the mind of enlightenment itself, is showing that it is made possible because all phenomena do not exist objectively but and independently, but rather arise in dependence. And so this makes it all possible. And this mind of enlightenment is symbolized by the moon mandala seat on our crown.
어디라 고맙네. 반대자가 라마를 뭐지 다게 지워병자 걸리죠. 고소도 정도도 자도서 스탠드 선대체는 아니 동계 난가게 라마샤자 생겼대마 주연체는 아니 랑게 지워 담배 가서 저 예배 가서 쇼 선배가 때려서 다 산재에 고마 마토고 봐도 라마토베 홍배 제로 송송 손을 가고.
So again we utter the invocation verse thrice. So glorious and precious Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the figure moves from the space in front, and then at the end of the second arrives at our pre-prepared seat on the crown. And at the end of the third, the Buddha is firmly placed on our crown. We have the assurance that the Buddha will remain to care for us until we attain the state of enlightenment, and we rejoice in that. Then we offer the 7 limbs of practice and the mandala offering. And as a result of our offering of the 7 limbs of practice and the mandala, the Buddha displays pleasure, in this pleasure transforms into emptiness or voidness, and it combines with bliss, and they abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. 산재 공부 중에 초반에 그 주도에 대해서 말씀 심지어 단적으로 산재 공부도 타면 두바지는 대 유언이도 두바지는 삼상 대대 장주 샘지게 근데 샘
Kene Tene Dubate, and a Tavage Yakawachi, Jurso, some such a tiny better than Neso, Tene Padesa, Lama, watch Niga Pemete, as a Kusu to Yuzatus, the Sunday Chavalaten, Tabu Capso, Chibonima, the second Nabacha Marcha, Yagi, Nipamata Jakara Shuso, sounds pet. Super attention, Sanja Kumato, but the Chelsea Kalkom. Then running Pamata come out some jet, and reading in that and take a logic of a song out the cat and the catch. The Tagoda, and a Dumbet of Monument Mamma's quadriga. And then it was some quadriga. Then she's a Jamaican, Omara Bazanati, the lesser Korachigotan. Then they go so yet amati, and a Kora Nagoja in the Sum quadriga. What the Chikumashisha?
And so then we begin to prepare a suitable seating arrangement at our heart center for the Guru Buddha, beginning with our, again, contemplating on cyclic existence and it being in the nature of suffering and our need to gain definite emergence from that state. And that is symbolized by the lotus mandala seat again at our heart center. And then contemplating again how all inner and outer phenomena lack any objective existence. And this relates to whether in cyclic existence or in the state beyond sorrow, that all of these situations lack any objective existence. They are have to arise in dependence on something else. And that this then position of there not being any established true or objective existence, and contemplating this to get to the mere negation of that object of negation produces the sun mandala seat on our heart center. And then on the basis of establishing that phenomena, therefore, must arise in dependence, and that if they, the very fact that they cannot arise independently points to the truth that they must arise independence, means that I can establish whatever I can, whatever I need to, by establishing all the causes and conditions. And therefore, the idea of attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings is both possible and verified by being able to say, I can accumulate all of the appropriate causes to lead to that state simply because of that nature of reality. And therefore, I reaffirm my intention to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that bodhicitta motivation is symbolized by the moon mandala seat. Then we again invoke the presence of the Buddha by uttering the invocation verse thrice. So glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the figure moves down through the crown chakra, down through the central channel. At the end of the second, they have arrived at our pre-prepared seat. And again, at the third, we have that certainty that the Buddha will remain to protect us until we attain the state of enlightenment. Then the petals of the lotus fold over and are sealed at their tips by a white 5-pronged semivajra, and surrounded then by 3 mantras: the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in a clockwise direction, the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent arising in a clockwise direction.
What is it? Lama and Kusum we say part of Meba Trena, Rangachibone, Kantiga Pala, we say Trene, and the Toma Meban Tiba, the Tibachita, Kabatoya, and the Sochova, Machimbala, Misan. And the June Tamatsuga, Janax and Nusalos of Takaja, Jebakana Madalasin, Hanan Yaba, Plantage saw you by Nepe, but Takaja Chikba Tasu some subject. And the Anisha Sotago to Batako, Jajusabel Lavata, Sangata, Tapseta Kevala Soa. The Padamala, Chibolo, Trosama, Simja Novelle, Donna. For the topic, you are called and you don't teach a condition, but that's or some such. And the Anisha church to be gay, Lula Nasa, single Dunga. Social Lula Nasa condition, but never chance or something. The Anisha single Dunga condition and never chance or something. And it's a long day, energy, Yamjachin, the Gadaba, Tilly, some such. Tobakia, to get so pita buku yuba insa ane wada joshi komani bada kwenyo ba chasu saza ta ane lakdon do da gechi shu de nyudo sanje goma tobala tamege nashi gyen cheshu chagodo tame nashi gyen tamja dana kana taja dabaram chabaji chado ba yago shu chofu sozo o goma cha
So now from the inside the lotus leaf package, light rays begin to emanate from the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha within, and permeating through every cell of my body, from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet, affecting a very thorough purification of all negativities and obscurations that we have accumulated since beginningless time, and in particular focusing on the 10 non-virtues of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, of lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, idle gossip, and the covetousness, malicious intent, and wrong view associated with the mental non-virtues. And all these are purified, all the negativities that we have accumulated in this life, and the one previous to this, and the one previous to that, going back to the beginningless time, all the negativities that are naturally occurring negativities or those proscribed by the Buddha are completely purified. All infractions and downfalls of Patimokkha, Bodhisattva, and Tantric vows are purified and rectified. All in this respect we have shown from our parents up to our gurus, and all of the negativities associated with mental illness and disease, and also physical illness and disease being inconducive conditions for our practice are completely and utterly purified. And then all of the elements in our body are kind of rectified and rebalanced, as are our channels, winds, and drops, and that our body is rendered perfectly pliable in relation to spiritual practice. And indeed, particularly the most serious impediment to our being able to attain liberation quickly, or enlightenment quickly, is this ordinary appearance, and that is done away with and swapped for the pure appearance.
And then Rangi Shindu Long the Nilangacha, Lama Shajas and good engine, so to the Lama Shajas and Kula Juso, Santaja. So the Shindu send the Lama Shajas and two the engine, so to send the Lama Shajas for Kula Juso, Rangi Lunga is a Lama Shajas of Kuzo or image Juso, Sansa, and the water. Dewati Tombata, Dewata, the Tony she kills some such. Around Nasa near the Lama New Gyan Tamjet and the Lama Shajas and the Tawashi to Jusu. Tara Lama Shajas and Kuljuate, and because of the Nala Shima Kumashe. And a day to Gala Lama Shajas and a part of Meba Turner, Simja Tanja Lama Shajas and a chat or the Shuala Tene, Simja Tamja, Simja Reden the Lama Shajas and a Kulu. To the war image Jusu. The Danesa net the new Gyan Taja, the Lama Shajas and the Tawashi to Jusu. Oh, that's some Tamjag Sanjay Sala cooking, send Nimatiri, go to Sona Kako. But that's some Sanjay Sala Kova, teach the Suzukiwa Kajua, to go so to the Chava, you didn't do what this are your money, some Kota Chavaja, some of the because of the Jocum Jet. And Kota Chava, some of them, you don't do what they were.
And so then through the combination of my own most subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of a Buddha. And then through the combination of my own most subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. Now I see my own body, speech, and mind as inseparable from that of an enlightened being. And from that point, I rejoice in seeing that. I can experience the bliss combined with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. And the place that I am in now is transformed of all contamination and fault and becomes the pure realm, palatial abode of an enlightened being. And in seeing myself as a fully enlightened being, and also the way that I do not exist in the way that I appear, I send out light rays equal in number to all the sentient beings in all the 6 realms of existence. And upon dissolving into their crowns, they arise spontaneously as fully enlightened Buddhas. Their place is freed of all contamination and fault and becomes the palatial abode of enlightened being. Again, I rejoice in this to understand that today is the day I've been able to attain the state of enlightenment and lead all sentient beings to that state, and that leading all sentient beings to that state, the merit that has facilitated this and myself as the agent of that virtue, that merit, completely lack any objective existence and are merely imputed by thought. And I place my placement meditation just on that very fact, that lack of the objective existence, the lack of true existence of all of that, and that brings forth a sense of bliss. And again, the combining with the voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
Niana, Dona, Sana, Tuna, Tungajuna, Devachuna, Takanichiba in there, then they never gonna chava in that. And Tama Shiba in there, Tiganga, and a Janjuga Sanda, Tony to a Shera give a twin yellow draw to watch. Twin yellow draw to watch. What are the chicken jet to a show that Jig Tolata, Petron chicken, yes, or what the Komacha, what the chat.
And of course, you know, this attainment of realizations of this kind do not occur just like that. I'm operating at the level of aspiration and the imagination here, but I certainly make a profound and sincere dedication that I will do whatever I can to attain that state of enlightenment myself, and knowing that in order to do that, I must develop the mind of enlightenment, the correct view of emptiness, etc., in my own mind stream. And that requires me then to use every single moment from here on in, whatever I am doing, to be able to see all of what occurs, whether it's happiness or suffering or whatever it occurs, as a conducive condition for further cultivating the mind of enlightenment and the correct view of emptiness.
Wonderful.
You are Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of compassion, not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Losang Drakpa, at your feet I make requests.
Lord, thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.